I was 17 when my whole world flipped upside down. It was a Wednesday afternoon in October, crisp, quiet, uneventful, or so I thought. I'd just gotten home from my part-time job at the library and was microwaving leftover spaghetti when I noticed my mom pacing the hallway, her face tight, her jaw locked. My dad was behind her, his arms crossed, eyes cold. "You want to explain this?" Mom snapped, shoving her phone in my face. On the screen was a string of text messages, screenshots, actually, between my sister, Caroline, and one of her friends. The messages claimed I had stolen money from Caroline's room, snuck out to drink with older guys, and had plans to run away and blame the family. It read like some teenage drama script. Except it wasn't true. None of it. "What the hell is this?" I asked, my hands shaking, spaghetti long forgotten in the microwave. "This isn't real. I didn't do any of this." My sister, standing smugly behind them with her arms folded, raised an eyebrow. "So now I'm a liar," she said, fake tears already brimming. "You're so manipulative, it's scary." I couldn't believe it. She was 2 years younger than me, always sneaky, always angling for attention. But this was next level. And my parents were eating it up like gospel. "We can't have this kind of toxicity in our home," Dad said, his voice low and stern. "You've been acting strange for months." "Strange?" "I was studying, working, saving money. Yeah, I kept to myself a lot, but only because Caroline thrived on drama and I was always the easy target. Either you admit to what you've done or you leave," Mom said. Her voice trembled, but not with sadness, anger. Disgust. I looked at my sister again. She didn't break. Not a single flicker of guilt. So I did the only thing I could. I packed a backpack. Just a backpack. I didn't even get to take my laptop or the small savings I'd hidden under my bed. As I walked out the door, I remember thinking, if this is what they think of me, then I'm better off gone. But what I didn't know, what no one knew, was that this was just the beginning. The night air was sharp. I had nowhere to go and exactly $43 in my pocket. No friends I could crash with, not ones my parents wouldn't immediately call, at least. And I refused to go to my aunt's. She'd probably report back to my mom before I even finished explaining. So I did something completely stupid. I walked to the bus station downtown and sat on a bench, hugging my backpack like it was some kind of shield. I stayed there for hours. At around 1 a.m., a guy about my age, maybe a couple years older, sat a few feet away. Hoodie up, headphones in. I glanced at him and then looked away. Stranger danger and all that. But then he looked over and asked, "You waiting for a bus or just hiding from life?" I laughed without meaning to. Little bit of both. His name was Miguel. He was couch hopping after leaving a toxic stepdad situation. He had that look about him, tired, scrappy, but alert. We talked for a while. I told him a little of what happened. He didn't look surprised. He nodded, then asked, "You got somewhere to sleep tonight?" I hesitated. Sort of. He squinted. "That a yes or a lie you're telling yourself so you don't panic?" "Okay, fair." He offered to take me to a community center a couple blocks away. "It's not the Ritz, but it's warm and they won't ask questions." I could have said no. But something about Miguel made me feel, not safe exactly, but not unsafe either. And at that point, I was running out of options. We walked there in silence mostly, and when we got to the place, low lights, smells of soup and sanitizer, I realized how truly far from home I was. But there was a quiet piece to it too. I curled up on one of the cots, fully clothed, hugging my backpack tight. Before I drifted off, I texted one person, my best friend from middle school who I hadn't spoken to in a while. Got kicked out. Not sure where I'm going. Just thought someone should know. I didn't expect a reply. But 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "WTF? Are you okay? Where are you?" It was from Ava, my best friend from middle school. We drifted after she moved to a different school in 10th grade, but we'd stayed Instagram close, liking each other's posts, commenting on birthdays. Still, I didn't think she'd respond, let alone so fast. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me was embarrassed. The other part was just tired. So I sent her the truth. Long story. My sister said some crap, my parents believed it. They kicked me out. Ava didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. 5 minutes later. "I'm coming to get you. Drop a pin." I stared at the screen. I hadn't cried up to that point, not when I was packing, not when I was sitting on that cold bench, not when I was walking into the shelter. But something about her message hit different. It was the first genuine act of kindness I'd felt in what seemed like forever. I dropped the pin. The shelter volunteers were a little wary about me leaving at 3 a.m. But Miguel gave me a nod and said, "She's good." Ava pulled up in her mom's hand-me-down Honda about 20 minutes later. Eyes wide, hair a mess. She launched out of the car and wrapped me in the tightest hug. "Jesus, you really weren't kidding," she muttered. "You look like you just crawled out of a disaster movie." "Feel like it too." We drove in silence for a while, her playlist softly playing in the background. It was surreal, being in someone's car again, the warmth, the smell of gum and fast food and cheap perfume. It felt like normal life, like something I just stepped out of by accident. "I don't want to pry," she said eventually. "But, like, what exactly did Caroline say to get you kicked out?" I gave her the rundown. How Caroline had spun this whole narrative about me stealing and drinking and plotting to ruin the family. How she cried on cue. How my parents didn't even hesitate. Ava's jaw clenched. That girl always gave me the creeps. We ended up at her dad's apartment. He worked nights as a security guard and apparently didn't ask questions as long as no one broke anything. I crashed on a pull-out mattress in her room, finally letting myself fall asleep. The next morning, she handed me a toothbrush and said, "Okay, so what's the plan?" I didn't have one. But that question, the assumption that I was going to do something, build something, survive this, sparked something in me. And that was the day the fire started to grow. Ava's question stuck with me. What was the plan? I had no home, no job anymore. The library let me go when I stopped showing up, and no real support. But what I did have barely was determination. Pride too. I wasn't going to let my sister's lies be the final stamp on my life. Ava let me stay a few more nights. Her dad didn't say much except, "Don't bring drama." And I kept out of the way. I cleaned their tiny kitchen, did dishes, even helped fix a busted toilet handle. I needed to feel useful, like I wasn't just taking up air. By the end of the week, I'd applied to every job I could walk to. Coffee shops, gas stations, fast food joints. I printed resumes on computer paper using Ava's creaky printer. I didn't even have much of a resume, just my library job and some tutoring I'd done under the table, but I made it look clean and confident. The first unexpected twist? I landed a job almost immediately, not from any of the applications I dropped off, but from a random encounter at a used bookstore I wandered into while killing time. The owner, a wiry woman named Darla with the posture of a crow and the vocabulary of a philosophy professor, caught me browsing the business section. "You actually reading that or just trying to look smart?" she asked, smirking. "Trying to be smart," I said. "Big difference." She chuckled and said, "Come in tomorrow at 9. You can sort books. We'll see if you're useless or not." That was it. My first yes in weeks. The job paid barely above minimum wage and only offered 20 hours a week, but Darla paid in cash and didn't ask for parental signatures or background checks. I didn't care about anything else. I had a start. I kept my head down, showed up early, stayed late. Darla didn't smile much, but I could tell she noticed. She started giving me more responsibility, inventory, organizing shipments, even running the register when she had errands. One afternoon, she handed me a dusty old book with a torn spine and said, "Take this. You might like it." It was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'd never even heard of it. But that night, I stayed up reading until my eyes burned. That book cracked something open in me, made me realize I could build something even if it had to be from the ground up. What I didn't know yet was that Darla used to be a startup consultant in another life. She saw something in me before I saw it myself. And the next twist, she wasn't the only one watching. A couple weeks into working at the bookstore, things started to shift. I was still crashing at Ava's place, alternating between the floor of her room and the busted recliner in the living room. Her dad was starting to get twitchy. He hadn't said anything directly, but he kept sighing louder every time he passed me. I knew the clock was ticking. I worked mornings at the bookstore, cleaned houses with Ava's cousin in the afternoons for extra cash, and read like a maniac every night. I devoured the 7 Habits and then moved on to books about entrepreneurship, psychology, finance, whatever I could get my hands on. I started filling a spiral notebook with ideas, quotes, even basic budgeting plans. Then came another unexpected moment. Darla cornered me in the back one day after I rearranged the entire philosophy section alphabetically and by topic. "You ever thought about community college?" she asked bluntly. I laughed. "Yeah, and I've also thought about teleportation. Doesn't mean it's happening, She didn't laugh back. You're sharp. You don't just do what I say you think. That's rare. Most people just exist. I shrugged. I don't exactly have tuition money lying around. You ever hear of the Pearson grant? She asked. It's local. Not huge, but enough to cover a semester. Nobody ever applies for it. I hadn't. She handed me a wrinkled flyer she'd fished out of a drawer. It was from last year, but still, it was a lead. I went home and searched it up. The application deadline for this year? 2 days away. Cue panic mode. I stayed up for 36 hours straight putting together an essay, digging up old transcripts, and trying to hunt down a teacher reference without alerting my parents. I even asked Miguel, who I still texted now and then, for a character reference. He sent back a heartfelt note that actually made me tear up a little. 2 days later, I hit submit and then tried to forget about it. Didn't even tell Ava. It felt too fragile, like saying it out loud might jinx it. Meanwhile, Darla quietly gave me more hours. She never said why, but I caught her once standing in the doorway of the shop while I restocked shelves, just watching me. She had this look on her face, pride, maybe, or something close. I was surviving. I was hustling. But deep down, I still hadn't faced it, my family. My sister. The lies. I avoided thinking about them altogether. Until one evening, as I was closing up the shop, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. My parents' SUV. Just sitting there. No one got out. I froze. And just like that, the past came knocking again. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. The bookstore windows were dusty and warped, but I knew that SUV. My dad's was the only one with that weird, peeling bumper sticker, proud band parent, still clinging for dear life from Caroline's middle school days. It was just sitting there across the street. Headlights off. Engine running. I ducked behind the counter. My heart was racing so hard it drowned out my thoughts. Why were they here? Did they find out where I worked? Was this some guilt trip or ambush? I peeked again, this time more carefully. Yup. That was definitely my mom in the passenger seat, looking down at her phone. My dad was behind the wheel, stone-faced. Neither of them got out. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then slowly, the SUV pulled away. I stayed on the floor for another 5 minutes, just breathing, trying to decide if I felt angry or sick or something else. The truth? I didn't know how to feel. They had my number. They had my email. If they wanted to talk, why not say something? Why just watch from across the street like creeps in a minivan? I didn't tell Ava. I didn't even text Miguel about it. I shoved it down deep. But that night, when I finally laid down on Ava's bedroom floor, I couldn't sleep. I just kept replaying it in my head. The fact that they came. That they knew. That they didn't say anything. What did they want? What had they heard? Then came another twist. 2 days later, I got an email. Congratulations. We're thrilled to award you the Pearson Community Empowerment Grant for the 2025 to 2026 academic year. I stared at the screen. Then reread it. Twice. I'd done it. I screamed so loud Ava thought something was on fire. I had tuition. I could actually go to college. I texted Darla even though she probably didn't check messages after 5 p.m. She replied immediately. I knew you would. Don't stop now. It felt like a fresh chapter was opening. But at the same time, part of the past was still lurking just outside the window. I had no idea yet that the SUV visit was only the beginning. They didn't come to talk. They came because they heard something. Something that was about to unravel the very lie my sister built her empire on. It happened faster than I could have imagined. I was riding high off the grant win, trying to focus on registering for classes and scraping together enough for books when Ava burst into the room holding her phone like it was radioactive. You need to see this, she said, eyes wide. She tossed her phone onto my lap. It was a screenshot of a post on our old high school's confessions page, an anonymous account where students posted gossip, crushes, and the occasional nuclear-level secret. Funny how the perfect little sister made up lies to get her sibling kicked out. Hope her college apps reflect that smiley face. Receipts coming soon.